Owing to its strategic location in the eastern Mediterranean, Cyprus has, over the centuries, seen its fair share of war and upheaval. Just 4 years after gaining its independence from Britain in 1960, the UN Security Council established the peacekeeping force in Cyprus known as UNFICYP. The mission was set up to quell the fighting that had broken out between the Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot communities over disagreements on how to share power in their newly formed republic.
The purpose of the United Nations presence here since 1964 was to prevent a recurrence of the fighting between the Greek Cypriot and the Turkish Cypriot communities, and to promote a maintenance of law and order and basically return the situation to normality.
Having established relative peace on the island, UNFICYP's mission was expanded when a military coup aimed at uniting Cyprus with Greece triggered a takeover of the northern part of the island by the Turkish army. With the country now physically divided, it became UNFICYP's role to manage the ceasefire line in the absence of an actual peace treaty between the two sides.
The green line actually is just a part of the buffer zone which runs through the centre of Nicosia. The buffer zone itself, island-wide, is 183 kilometres from east to west, and we're actually standing now at the narrowest point of the green line, which is 3 metres wide.
Not only does the width of the buffer zone vary greatly, so do the types of terrain that UNFICYP needs to monitor between the opposing forces. Here in the western part of the island, vast tracts of mountainous country also have to be patrolled on a daily basis.
They patrol the buffer zone, but the main function is to control the track because, as you can see, in our sector we have a lot of mountains and the track is very difficult. Also, we stop in different places like hills or strategic points to observe the positions because we have to control that there is not overmanning there or they are not building something new in the position.
We try to maintain the buffer zone in the condition it was and try to prevent it from deteriorating any further.
One of the key roles played by UNFICYP is to facilitate communications between the two sides and often to negotiate measures that reduce tension along the buffer zone. This has undoubtedly prevented thousands of small incidents from escalating into major hostilities.
What we would like to see is an agreement here which would lead to a massive drawdown of troops here. The security environment would improve enormously as a result of that.
Along the Green Line in Nicosia, UNFICYP successfully negotiated an agreement in 1989, where troops from both sides left some of their observation posts unmanned.
The buffer zone is very quiet right now because of the hard work of our soldiers. It's a small force, but we can assure you that the force is well trained, equipped, and ready to assist in any situation that can arise.
Alongside the 860 UNFICYP soldiers are 69 civilian police officers. They hail from 10 different nations and work day and night, maintaining law and order in the area under UNFICYP control.
And we are the people who police in the middle of the buffer zone, and we deal with any situation that may arise in there from a civilian point of view.
Recently, an agreement has been reached between the two sides to establish a joint communication room in Nicosia. Here, overseen by UNFICYP, representatives of the Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot communities can exchange information on known criminals and coordinate efforts to catch them.
Crime has no nationality, it has no religion, and it has no borders.
This was a confidence-building measure for everybody on the island because criminals just see opportunities.
We are discussing the problems and we are trying to help each other.
Despite being a de facto buffer zone dividing two armies that have never signed an official ceasefire, over 15,000 people live and work there. Promoting normal activities within the buffer zone is something that has been actively encouraged by UNFICYP as a way of maintaining peace on the island.
4, 3, 2, 1.
One way this has been further helped has been through the clearance of landmines by the UN Mine Action Centre in Cyprus, a programme supported by UNFICYP.
The programme started back in 2004 to clear the buffer zone of all the minefields. So far we've cleared about 60 minefields and over 20,000 mines. The 60 minefields that we've cleared equate to roughly 9 square kilometres, and the vast majority of that land, once it's been cleared, returns to productive farmland.
Mine clearance helps prevent death and injury in the future, but in Cyprus, the echoes of its troubled past are never far away. In a purpose-built laboratory in Nicosia, local scientists from both communities work together at the Committee on Missing Persons, identifying and returning to their relatives the remains of those who disappeared during the intercommunal fighting and the military intervention that followed it.
Exhumations have been taking place over the last 5 years across the island. We visited more than 340 sites, and we have exhumed more than 560 sets of remains. From the relatives' perspective, it has a huge impact because after 30 or 40 years, they finally receive the remains of their relatives, and they're able to bury them properly and pray for them.
UNFICYP is also involved in numerous other projects that have been assigned to the mission during its peacekeeping role over the decades. Two of the roles, ongoing since the separation of the two main communities, have been the provision of access passes for farmers whose lands lie within the buffer zone, and humanitarian assistance to Greek Cypriots and Maronites living in the north and Turkish Cypriots living in the south.
Our presence is to monitor their welfare, to make sure that if there are any specific educational, cultural, social, economic rights that they have that they are unable to fulfill on their own, that we can assist them, we can intercede on their behalf with the authorities on both the north and the south side.
The buffer zone has in parts become wild and inhospitable, but there are times when members of either community may want to visit a place or monument of importance within its confines. As much as possible, UNFICYP does its best to facilitate such visits. Here, around 1,000 Orthodox Greek Cypriots are paying their annual visit to the Aya Marina Church near Famagusta.
This is the buffer zone, and that is the reason so why we are here, and we are transporting the people into the church.
One of the most positive developments UNFICYP has presided over has been the opening of several crossing points linking the two communities, most notably the one in Lydra Street in the heart of Old Nicosia in 2008. And another crossing point was opened in 2010 near Limnitis Yeşilimak in the far western corner of the island, the seventh gateway bridging the two communities. This helped bring to an end decades of isolation for many remote villages and cut travel times to the capital in half.
This will bring a terrific boost to the economy of the villages on both sides of the crossing.
Across the country, increasing numbers of Cypriots are taking part in events and activities that encourage deeper personal bonds and greater understanding.
UNDP Action for Cooperation and Trust is essentially a people's project. We're about bringing people from all communities across the island together to work on issues of common concern.
We work a lot with young people, with educators, with researchers, with business people. Through these projects that we have, we provide a platform for people, for Cypriots to come together.
Back in the capital, under the auspices of the UN Secretary-General's good offices in Cyprus, the Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot leaderships are engaged in negotiations aimed at bringing about the reunification of the island.
They have essentially been living separately since 1974 for 36 years. But in their hearts, they're Cypriots. Yes, they're Turkish Cypriots, yes, they're Greek Cypriots, but they have many strong common bonds, including cultural bonds, which definitely bind them together. They're not just bound together by geography, they're bound together by culture and history. And I think in the years ahead they can learn to live together again and work together again.
UNFICYP and the Good Office's mission in Cyprus continue to work hand in hand to facilitate the negotiations between the two sides, with the Secretary-General's assurance that he will continue to give unwavering support to all Cypriots in their search for a settlement.
I think in the event of a settlement, the United Nations would certainly stay to support whatever kind of implementation was required of the settlement, and we would certainly do everything possible to help Cyprus on its new path towards peace.
So we're glad that the leaders are...
UNFICYP's vast experience of almost half a century has been supported by the efforts of more than 150,000 peacekeepers that have served here since operations began. When and if an agreement is reached and approved by voters on both sides of the island, this knowledge and expertise will likely be called upon to help Cyprus make the transition towards becoming a united country at last, providing future generations of Cypriots with security and peace.